Oh, yeah, because it's not on here.
Yeah.
Well, the other one started at 9:15, but who the hell cares?
Yeah, I don't, because we're not going to go
The
there.
thing outside the door says 9.
Yeah, there you go. I took a picture of it, so I remember.
I did too.
I really do believe you guys. Okay.
We didn't think you
I
did.
got my information from you.
For me?
Yeah.
Oh, Lord.
That could be.
906.
Sat on the couch, I was tired when I asked for Pete. He never remembered the next one, but I got Pete.
Wireless microphone.
It was the ribs.
What are you doing?
I'm going to try to get a bookmark for 12 Traditions, right?
Oh. You want some help?
I can screw this up all by myself. Well, yeah, I want you to put your finger right here. That's hard. There we go. All right. So you want to make announcements? Because you had some announcements yesterday. You want to have some announcements?
What did I announce yesterday?
Let me see. I let them know that we didn't care if we were wrong or not.
Let's just pray and see what happens.
All right, let's pray. The we version of the third step prayer. Many of us said, take our will in our lives, guide us in our recovery, and show us how to live. Huh? Who are we? We're a renegade history committee.
There you go.
Yeah, we used to be a legitimate history committee back in the early 90s. And I know you guys don't know this, but sometimes there's controversy in Narcotics Anonymous.
But you are gone, and you are.
I'm not that far yet.
Oh,
Jesus Christ. All right.
Where? Don?
I'm Don. I'm an addict.
hey, Don.
I'm an addict. My name's Rusty.
Brother Rusty, I'm Ryan. I'm an addict.
All right.
I'm the baby. I don't ever get to be the baby anymore. I love it.
Yeah, but you're the oldest.
Well, I am.
You are.
But I'm the leastest in clean time.
You're almost senile.
It's nothing to be proud of.
Just what it is, man.
So, who would like to volunteer and come read how it works?
He's volunteered.
All right. Read to where step one starts, okay?
Read to here.
So the essay on step one.
Okay.
He's very.
I'm an addict named Andy.
Hey.
If you want what we have to offer and are willing to make an effort to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps. These are the suggestion only, but they are principles that made our recovery possible. 1, we admitted that we were powerless over our addiction, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. 4, we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, we admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, we humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 8, we made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, we made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would inure them or others. 10, we continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, we sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for a knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of those steps, we tried to carry this message to addicts and participate these principles in all our affairs. This sounds like a big order, and we can't do it all at once. We didn't become addicted in one day, so remember, easy does it. There's one thing more than anything else that will defeat us in our recovery. That is an attitude of indifference or intolerance toward spiritual principles. Although there are no must in NA, there are 3 things that seem indispensable. These are honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness to try. With these, we are well on our way. We feel that our approach to the problem of addiction is completely realistic, for the therapeutic value of one addict helping another is without parallel. We feel that our way is practical, for one addict can best understand and help another addict. We believe that the sooner we face our problems within our society and everyday living, just that much faster do we become acceptable, responsible, and productive members of that society. The only way to keep from getting or continuing a habit is not to take that first fix, pill, or drink. If you're like us, you know that one is too many and 1,000's never enough. We put great emphasis on this, for we know that when we use drugs in any form or substitute one for another, we release our addiction all over again or create a new one. The substitution of alcohol has caused a great many addicts to form a new addiction pattern, which in its progression brings as many problems as before. We seem to forget that alcohol is one of the oldest known drugs. It would appear that we are people with addictive personalities who are strongly susceptible to alcoholic addiction. Are we sure we want to stop using? Do we understand and believe that we have no real control over drugs? Do we recognize that in the long run, we don't use drugs, they use us? Do we fully accept the fact that our every attempt to stop using or control our using failed? Do we know that drugs have a power to change us into liars, thieves, and schemers? Do we know in our guts that as successful drug users, we have failed? We admit to ourselves that every time we hurt someone, we are loaded or trying to get loaded. When we came to NA, we were physically, mentally, and spiritually bankrupt. We hurt long enough and badly enough that we were willing to go to any lengths to stay clean. To live by the example of those who faced our dilemma and have found a way out seemed to be our only hope. When we first came into the fellowship of NA, we were often resentful at the suggestions some of the members made to us. Regardless of who we are, where we have come from, or what we have done, we are accepted in NA. Our addiction gives us all a common ground for understanding one another. When we were using, reality became so painful that oblivion was preferable. We had to keep other people from knowing about our pain. We isolated ourselves and lived in prisons built out of our own loneliness. Through this desperation, we sought out Narcotics Anonymous. After attending a few meetings, we began to feel like we finally belonged somewhere. It was in these meetings that we were first introduced to the 12 steps of NA. We worked them in order that they were written, and we use them on a daily basis. They are our solutions. They have become our survival kit. Our addiction is a deadly disease. Our steps are suggested only, but they are the principles that make our recovery possible.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay.
Do you want to read the traditions?
Who'd like to read the tradition?
He'll show you where to start and where to stop.
Let's start here and go to right to the beginning.
I'm setting on that.
Hey, let's say,
The people we have on vigilance, and this is freedom for the individual comes from 12 steps, so freedom from the group comes from our conditions. As long as the ties that bind us together are stronger than those that will tear us apart, all will do enough. 1, our common welfare is first. Personal recovery depends on NAED. 2, for our group purpose, there is one ultimate authority, the loving God who made us first himself and our group. Our leaders are the trusted sermon that they do not govern. 3, on requirement for membership and the desire to stop using. 4, each group should be autonomous except for matters affecting other groups or NA as a whole. 5, each group has one primary purpose, to carry the message to the addict who still suffers. 6, NA group will never endorse finance or limit NA name to any facility or outside enterprise. From money, property, or prestige divert us from our primary purpose. 7, every NA group ought to be fully self-supporting and find outside contributions. 8, Narcotics Anonymous training, credible non-professional, and service and for special workers. 9, NA is select but never be organized, but we may create service boards or committees directly responsible for those they serve. 10, NA has no opinion outside issues, since the NA name ought never be drawn into public controversy. 11, our public relations policy is based on traction or other promotion. We always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, and 12, anonymity, spiritual nation of all traditions, every one of us has or personalities. Thank you.
thank you.
Okay, who wants to read the rest of the traditions? That's fine.
There's a whole bunch more stuff.
Yeah, there's a bunch more stuff.
Do you want to?
Well, anybody can do it. Yeah.
There's
All
another
right.
page.
Now I don't want you to feel stupid, but when I said to read the tradition 1, that's kind of what I meant.
But for the essay on tradition 1, he's a horrible communicator.
Horrible.
Oh, and this one is so different. to memorize these things. This was different. We come to this program from homes and apartments, offices, and schools, treatment centers, and jails, parks, and gutters. We come from many different places, but they all share loneliness, pain, and fear. Somehow addiction draws us in Narcotics Anonymous. We come to this program for many different reasons. Those of us who stay use so for the same reasons, to stop using and stay clean. After we've actually stopped and the fog has cleared a bit, most of us take a look around to see what this program is all about. We start trying to do things we see those around us do. Eventually we come to the 12 steps and try to work them the best we can. The result is a degree of freedom that we never have known before. We find freedom from drugs and the obsession to use them. In a time, a bit of freedom from the part of ourselves that has been destroyed. We're taught that we can only keep what we have by giving it away. So we seek out and give our hand to other addicts who have problems like ours and want to help. Usually one of the first things we try to do when we're working with a newcomer is to get them to do a meeting. After all, it's what works for us. Why is this so? What is it about our meetings that's so special? Usually all we can say is that they're a feeling of strength and hope and love and an atmosphere of recovery. Our meetings are very special to both of us. They're a place where we feel safe, a place where we fit in. But what keeps it that way? One would think that anytime people like us get together, the results would be chaos. Groups of self-centered, self-help, isolated individuals just can't meet together peacefully and safely. But we do. The reasons that we can is that we have the 12 traditions to help keep our group safe and free. For most of us, understanding these traditions comes slowly over a period of time. We pick up information here and there as we talk to members and do the various groups. It usually isn't until we get involved with service that someone points out that personal recovery depends on unity, and that unity depends on how well we follow our tradition. Because we're about to hear we hear about suggested steps and no must so often, some of us make mistakes and assume that this applies to our groups the way it applies to the individual. 12 traditions of are not negotiable. They are the rules that keep our fellowship alive and free. While following these principles in our dealings with others, and sorry, I have like fake teeth, so it's hard to read all of
Breathe.
God. You can't screw it up, okay? It's impossible.
Woo! By following these principles, our dealings with others in a society are hard to avoid many problems. This isn't to say that our traditions eliminate all problems. We self-face difficulties they arise. Communication problems, differences of opinion, internal controversies, problems with individuals and groups outside the fellowship. However, we apply these principles, we avoid silly pitfalls. Many of our problems are like those our predecessors had to face. Their hard work experience gave birth to traditions, and our own experiences have shown that these principles are just as valid today as they were yesterday. Our traditions are what protect us from the internal and external forces that could destroy us. They are really designed to bind us together, but they don't work automatically. It is only through understanding and application that they have power.
All right. So it's all you could all tell those are not the readings we read now, and that's because this is from the Gray Book, the approval form of the basic text.
I'm right, I'm an addict. I got 3 thoughts that come out of that.
You better get it right now.
That's what I was going to do before you get wound up. When he was reading, he talked, oh shit, I had another senior moment. Oh, there's no must in the name. You ever read the basic text? There's a buttload of them. One of the women's sponsorship families where I come from, that's one of the first things they have responsees do, is sit down and list the must in the first 100 pages of the basic text. Now, I don't remember how many, there's a bunch. 3. No, there's more than that. I have the basic text on CD-ROM, which is a great cheat sheet for that exercise. You can just type that word in and it'll give you everywhere it appears in the book. But so that's something that we read all the time. It's not like, we also, every meeting I go to, you read, what is the Narcotics Anonymous program? It says we are not affiliated with any religious or legal or whatever groups. That's not true. We keep roll for the criminal justice system. We sign attendance documentation. Now, we dress it up by saying that we're not doing it for them, we're doing it for the addict that brings the card in there. And that's the fine line distinction that we make. It's hard for the average bear to see the difference. But I had 2 more things.
You said 3, so that was 2, so you have at least 1 more.
I know, but I'm having another senior moment, Don. I mean,
To answer your question, this is from 1981.
81?
Yeah. This says printed in Memphis, Tennessee, Copyright 1981, Knowles LC, Literature Committee. It's dated February the 15th, 1981, Dear Fellow Addicts. And then basically it's how to use this form. This form has numbers on every line and a page, and then there's space in between. And the idea was to read through this in your literature committee, and where you wanted to see things changed or added, you would put in the beginning, there's a page number, line number, comment, you know, and the idea was to send this back in, okay, to or send this form, or you know what you wanted corrected, what you thought could be said better. So that's what this was. That's why it's so much longer than what we read now, because we edited it down. Anyway, hopefully that answers your question.
That one he's got there is a copy. This is a real one. They're just alike, you know, except one of them's old and the other one's not. I've got a picture somewhere of a guy standing in a room, which is like I think a bedroom in an apartment in Memphis that was Joseph Proctor's apartment.
Yeah, I've been in that apartment.
Joseph a little bit yesterday, and their gray books are stacked up like chest high all over the room. And that's where before they were getting ready to mail them out. And that guy's name is Gene Lerner.
Yeah.
He's a friend of mine. He sent me a list of the traditions the other day, the spiritual principles behind the steps that are different from the list that I read y'all yesterday. And I haven't been able to get back with him yet to talk to him about it contains the principle of brotherly love, which I've heard talked about forever. But in that picture, he has this like giant afro, which I call an afro, but his wife described it as a Jewfro, which I'd never heard that terminology
He's Jewish
before, which I figured you could get in trouble by.
I was in that room 2 weeks clean. I thought I had walked into NA Mecca. It was like, I'd never seen so much NA stuff in my whole life. It was like, oh.
It was in a Mecca, right?
It was.
Yeah. Go, Don.
I'm waiting for you. I'm in the front. The less I have to say, the better I am.
Oh, okay. I was going to tell you about this because this is not going to fit anywhere. Where
Notes are good.
I talked to Ed yesterday, for those of y'all that Ed Cox, Motorcycle Ed, who's kind of one of our predecessors, and that reminds me of something else.
Okay.
The only place that word appears in NA literature, to the best of my knowledge, is in the readings on the traditions, and what it's talking about. When it says predecessors, it's talking about Alcoholics Anonymous.
I know.
And anytime we use that word in the fellowship, that ain't what it means. It's talking about people that got here to NA before us, and I've always thought that was kind of an interesting aside. But we were talking about Greg and Beau yesterday, and I called Ed, and he told me that Greg got clean in 1970, and Beau got clean in 1974. So that kind of sets the deal for that. And talking about Greg, he was kind of the founder of Fun in the Sun, basically. There is, I think, still a meeting at Peachford Hospital in Atlanta. And I don't know if it's an H&I meeting. I don't think it was then, because I don't think there was such a thing as H&I. And there were several of them that just standing around talking after I think it was on a Friday night. And
Did you get one of these yesterday in your interest?
I got one yesterday.
Anybody didn't get one?
somebody said, let's go down to the coast and watch the sun come up over the Gulf. This is on Friday night after the NA meeting. So they piled in the car, drove down here, slept in the car, got up and walked out on the beach and watched the sun come up. On Saturday morning, he spent the day here and drove back. That was the first Fun in the Sun.
Oh,
okay. That was in 1978.
No t-shirt.
He thinks. No, there was no t-shirt, no coffee mug, no nothing. And the next year or the year after, they chartered a bus and came down here and did that. And in 1979, that's when they did the bus thing. And it was kind of organized enough that they showed they could do that as an area and a region. And not, I mean, it was an Atlanta area deal. It was never a Georgia regional deal, okay? And that was enough to show NA World Services that they could do an activity without losing money. And that's how they got the World Convention to be in Atlanta in 1979. I don't think you could pull that off like that today. Because the World Convention is a whole different animal now than it was then. But, I'm all done now,
Right.
just for this moment.
I think they're enjoying themselves. You got something?
I just wanted to, we keep talking about these people, Greg and Beau, and that's because they were so instrumental in the birth of all this, especially what we're going to talk about today, the basic text. Greg was he chairman of the Board of Trustees or chairman
Yes,
of the World
he was
Service?
chairman of the board for years.
Yeah.
He was chairman of the Board of Trustees for years. I don't know where he was originally from, but I've heard he's lived in Atlanta. I heard he lived in Tennessee. He lived in Seattle. I mean, he's lived all over.
He got clean in Los Angeles.
Los Angeles, I didn't know that. Okay. And as we were talking about yesterday, Beau got clean, what, 74?
Yes.
And for some reason, we were still, well, not for some reason, we were still using other people's literature. And the story goes that he was real interested in finding out who was writing the book. And as Don shared yesterday, everybody thought Jimmy would write the book because Jimmy wrote quite a bit of stuff. So that kind of leads into, in 1977,
Yeah. If you got that thing that we just handed out to you, it says 1978, but that's a lie. It's 1977.
it's a misprint.
Yeah. And
The
we know
last-
it's a mistake, so you don't have to tell us.
The last and only part of the book that I know of that Jimmy actually wrote was written in 1965, and it tells you that in the basic text.
Yes, it does.
It's where the front end of We Do Recover is his story. Okay, it's the only part of the book one of the basic text that's written in the first person.
Right. And in 77, Beau goes to the World Service Conference. And that was in
San Francisco.
I think it was the World Convention.
World Convention.
Yep. 7th World Convention. San
Seventh World
Francisco.
Convention. And him and Greg get pushed together and started talking about the book. And I heard Beau say on a speaker tape last couple days ago that after talking to Greg, he felt like he had permission to go from the highest up you could go. Because he went and talked to Jimmy at the World Conference. And Jimmy said, go talk to Greg. And we have a letter here that kind of is dated December 16th of that same year, 1977. They actually spent a lot of time together, as the story goes. You mean to read this?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay. This is from Beau to Greg. December 16th, 1977. Dear Greg, guess who bought a typewriter? So it starts with an exclamation point. I hope you have a nice Christmas. Please say hi to Lois and the baby. Hope to see you next year. I've gotten off to a rolling start with the writing. I've started umpteen pamphlets and worked on a few notes for the NA book. My friends here know of my efforts, and I hope to get a few of them together soon for input and discussion. Hopefully this will take place here and elsewhere. Thank God it has begun. At this point, I feel like we have to involve as many as possible to make sure we cover all the points of view. Involving people might strangle the effort in controversy, but I truly trust the spirit and believe that we'd be poor servants to leave them out. Somehow, if we could get our best minds together, our best minds working on this in harmony, I just know it would strengthen the gut of the program. In my thinking, it has occurred to me what we're up against, like, is NA a cure for addiction? How to help doctors learn to treat or react to addiction. I would hate to see any valid point of view left out. Also, I would hate to see any great length of time elapse without some progress. Please write to me, my friend, your friend, Beau. And that kind of is what started the whole us getting a book, and that was in 77. There was 7 lit conferences. Beau got moved into World Lit Chair. He was the second World Lit Chair.
He might have been the first. Now I'm confused.
I've heard he was second.
I was looking at the timeline. I couldn't remember if the girl was first and sure she was second.
I heard him say on the speaker tape that he said he was the second. Yeah, second World Lit Chair. And the way that happened was he got on the phone with Jimmy, and Jimmy said he was in charge of the Lit Committee for the World Service Office. And he said, wait a minute, how did that happen? And Jimmy said, you just are. And because he said, I can't do this, you know, I can't send a letter to the fellowship. And he said, yes, you can. And then all of a sudden he got elected and nominated to the World Lit Committee. And that's what gave him permission to go with this.
But listen to what he says in that letter. I mean, most addicts ain't gonna take that tack. And he today might not take that tack. And that kind of shows me that he could have approached this very differently. He could have taken it and kind of made it his and done it his way. And that's not what he chose to do. He chose to involve as many people as humanly possible in the process. And we're a bunch of self-centered, self-seeking, conning and manipulative sons of bitches, just not to put too fine a point on it.
There were, of the 7 lit conferences that we had, they're all listed in the front of the basic text. If you've ever read that preface, it lists all the cities. There are 418 addicts who were documented as being at those 7 conferences. There was a whole bunch of folks who weren't. Probably twice as many who
I
weren't.
was just gonna make a comment, he's still the same way.
I can't
He's still
hear
the
you.
same way, Beau's still the same way when it comes to trying to, he doesn't at all, he's actually, he wants to help give people the right ideas, he's very.
Yes, he is.
He is.
It's part of his character.
Yeah. I've run out of
Okay,
time.
so when Beau asked Greg about the basic text, Greg gave him his standard answer. He says, who's writing the book? And he said, you are. And that's what he always would tell people, and he'd always look for input. So, and that was in 1977. One of the things what was I going to say? Oh, there's a lot of history, and what we really wanted to do maybe is open up, because there's a lot of people that talk a lot, about things, and I was hoping we might open it up to questions. So I was going to go real quick over the editions without any controversy. And then, not that we can't have, I like controversy, but I'm just going to go through it because there's such a big umbrella, right? First of all, there was a publication that we had that we lost. That was put together, and nobody knows what happened to it. There's a lot of people that didn't want the book. There were some people that did want the book, and so before the Gray Book came out, there was a draft that many people at the time thought it was the best draft, and we lost it. We don't know what happened to it, and so we went back to Warren, Ohio, and did the best we could to put that stuff together. All right. And that was before the traditions were written. And then when we wrote the traditions were written pretty much in a one-step process of Beau and Greg being on the phone, Greg dictating to Beau the traditions, Beau dictating it to a typewriter person who I can't remember her name. And I think that lasted about 8 hours nonstop.
On the phone.
Right?
That's when long distance was a really big deal, which you can't hardly grasp today.
That was
The late 70s.
it would be in it probably was in 80, 81. 80, I mean, that was the last thing we did before we did the Gray. In fact, I think that was the last thing we did before we did the Gray Book.
Gray Book was 81 is what this
Yeah,
said.
so it was in that
In
area.
Memphis.
Yeah. What was I going to, I'm having a Ryan moment.
Oh, shit.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. So they lost that, and they had to put something else back together, and what they put together is what we have now in our Gray form, and from our Gray form, we got input, and we did a white copy. All right, from the Gray form, there was a white copy approval form of the basic text. Now, in the white copy of the approval form, there was no
Line numbers.
well, and there was no input. It was yes or no.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was yes or no. That was it. All right, and that's where they decided. When it's like that physician's opinion thing that's in the Gray form isn't in the there's basic text. As you can tell, a lot of the stuff that we read and how it works in the 12 traditions was taken out or reworded, and so we got the first edition. The first edition was 2,500 copies. All right. It's that red book right there. All right, that's number 3. That's Beau's copy.
Not anymore.
It used to be Beau's copy. All right. And
I didn't borrow it, I bought it.
And yeah, we stole it. I just, I distracted Beau. It's easy to distract.
I mean, you stole it.
I know exactly
Yeah,
what you mean.
I was trying to make it nicer. And so we got the $25 to do the first run, 2,500 copies. All right, we did the first run of that book, and then we did a run of 2,500 copies of the Blue Book. All right. Now that is much more sought after than the Blue Book, but the blue one is much harder to find, especially in good shape, because people used the Blue Book. Lots of people didn't use this. Now during this time now, and there's a lot of things we can talk about. There's a lot of people have a lot of different opinions, and this is pretty much completely oral history, okay? But there were some things that went on, and there were some things when Jimmy was the head of the World Service Office. There was this kind of tradition of saying that the World Service Office was not part of Narcotics Anonymous, that it was separate. All right. And by the time then that's how they wrote the fourth and ninth tradition in the basic text. And by the time it got ready to be printed, okay, there was a couple other guys. There was Jimmy, and we can get into all this stuff. But bottom line is, some people without approval of the fellowship rewrote the fourth and ninth tradition to include the service structure as part of Narcotics Anonymous. Okay, and their idea was, how can something that serves Narcotics Anonymous not be part of Narcotics Anonymous? And so they put it in here, and they did it without permission. And then another thing that happened at that time, I forgot what the sum of money is, but we had a publisher, that we're using, a publisher, and Jimmy gave them, I think it might have been $5,000, but I can't remember. Maybe it was $2,000, but it was enough money
It was a lot of money to us.
to
then.
publish the book. And this person decided that they wanted to go on a drinking spree, and they were a member of a program called Alcoholics Anonymous. You guys probably never heard of that program, but it's a nice program. It's a good one. And so there was some controversy around that because we lost the $5,000. And the reason I'm telling you all that is because there's so much stuff that went on. And by the time we got to where Jimmy was asked to leave the World Service Office, which he was not told that he was going to be replaced, and Bob Stone was going to be the first CEO, a non-addict, to help us become a worldwide fellowship that was actually a functional worldwide fellowship. Neither one of them probably communicated, and one of the best, and there's a lot of issues over this. One of the best things that I have heard was in Nashville, they had the 50th anniversary history convention, which was amazing. If you can get the tapes for it, I suggest you get the tapes for, or see. They're online, I think. I'm pretty sure they are, aren't they?
They are.
Yeah. So it was when Beau, because Beau was part of this, and there was a big split. Not a schism where we started a new program, but a big split in this. And Beau said that he just thought, looking back, that we're probably we're not the best communicators in the world, and that Bob thought somebody told Jimmy. Nobody told Jimmy, and nobody told Bob that they didn't tell Jimmy. So Jimmy came in, and the doors were locked, and then the story goes right from there, right? But we have now we have a basic text. All right.
As Vito will share, he said Jimmy died of a broken heart.
Yeah, he does
And I
say
believe
that.
there's truth.
There's I'm trying to think of the guy's name, but there was somebody who said he's on a phone call when the night before when they told Jimmy. I'm sorry, I was trying to get his name. Joy was talking about it, and somebody else came up and said there was a guy, I forget his name, but he was on the phone call where they had a discussion with Jimmy the night before that Bob was going to become, and there was some confusion about when they were actually going to do that was really what a lot of kept. So there was a phone call where they told him that he was going to be replaced.
Yeah, I've heard that story too.
And I also wanted to point out something too. I'm not saying it's the controversy you mentioned about the fourth and ninth. It was actually Greg Pierce was the one who wrote about the NA and being organized, not being organized, and being in fellowship, the groups and stuff. He's the one that wrote in the great book. about, because he dictated, I think her name was Linda, and he dictated to her, well, they dictated was that the service structure was for NA, not of NA. And he wrote, there's a clearly right in their distinction in there, so it wasn't just like a common thing, he was actually the one. And it became a big dispute between, like you said, that's where it took place, because he was actually the one who wrote that in there. The service structure was not Narcotics Anonymous, it was service for Narcotics Anonymous. So I just want to point that out, so that's where it came from. And that's when it was changed.
Interesting.
My understanding has always been that Jimmy did
Yeah.
that unilaterally before it went to the printer.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah, it was a couple of people, but he was the one who basically made that decision that it needed to be taken out. And it started a big fire because a lot of people, that wasn't, it was Greg who was the one who put it in writing. When they changed it.
yeah, that's right. And so, some people were upset about the 4th and 9th tradition being changed.
Really?
Yeah, I know, it's kind of weird, isn't it? Without fellowship approval, I know. And that's where we came up with the second tradition that has the original 4th and 9th tradition in it. And I think it's really important to understand that there's always going to be some opinions about this, right? And we might not all agree what fellowship approved means or does not mean, right? Especially for some of us that might have opinions about the 5th edition, okay? But the bottom line is that in some form or fashion, every edition of the basic text has been fellowship approved. Yes, sir.
I'm Ray, and I'm an addict.
Hey, Ray.
It's my understanding that after the changes were made, it was resubmitted to the World Service Conference and approved.
Yes.
So then it is fellowship approved.
You can get
It wasn't fellowship approved when the changes were made.
I don't. What are we talking about? I mean, the second
He's
tradition.
talking about the second.
Yeah, it was fellowship approved. Yeah.
So the argument that it was never fellowship approved is false.
No, that's not why I said that. I'm sorry.
I'm not
Okay.
disagreeing with what you said, but there's a misconception that the changes were never fellowship approved, and that is false.
It was fellowship approved for 1 year.
I was really talking about the whole process between the 3rd revised, 4th, and 5th edition. Okay, but yeah, it was definitely fellowship approved, and then we got, then we decided, to change it back. All right, a lot of stuff went on. We can talk about that if we want to. And that was the third edition, and we corrected some spelling errors and some context and some things like that. Because from the beginning, we knew that how fast we put this book out, that it was going to be a living document for a while, that it was going to change. It was always known that it was going to be revised.
And I'm not saying, I just think that it needs to be, that people never heard this before, they can kind of hear what happened in the 3rd edition. They actually removed the 4th and 9th edition out.
That's what didn't I say
I don't know
that?
if you heard that. That's the difference, and the difference from the 2nd edition to 3rd edition. The 2nd edition was actually, the last edition actually went out to all the home groups to actually get approved by the home groups. Since that process has never taken place, that was where a lot of people, the sticking point a lot of people came, because that was when they shifted from the home groups having to say to where they had the service structure of the WSC. That's when that took place in Canada. So that was a lot of people still have, correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, that's my interpretation, was that the 2nd edition was the last one that actually was approved by each individual throughout the fellowship. And then that's when the process took place as far as that goes. And that was what caused the big, which you're probably about to go into.
Well, I thought the 3rd edition revised went out to the
I thought it did too.
Yeah.
It's the white book, if I'm not mistaken, it's the white book that was actually the part that was the changes that were made to the headers or whatever, the front pages of the white book, was what was due. And that was the changes they made, and there were some light edits that were supposed to happen.
That was the 4th edition.
Yeah, that was.
Well, okay, so maybe I'm wrong.
I really thought the 3rd edition revised went out to the home groups. And that was a bigger change of wording and stuff like that from the 3rd revised, right? Which still included the original 4th and 9th tradition.
And that was 86.
Yeah, and then if you read Bob Stone's book, because there's a lot of controversy over this too, because when the 4th edition came out,
I think.
they had permission to do it. The World Service Office had permission to go from the 3rd edition revised to the 4th edition, and hired some people to revise some of the language and some of the punctuation, and we thought as a fellowship that they went way too far. All right, but the big problem was that computers were coming into age at that time, right? And there was a lady, I don't remember all these names because I don't really care anymore, but she did all the work for the 4th edition, and there was several files, right? You know, and then there was the final draft. And some reason she quit working, and she hadn't worked in, it says it in there, I think it was at least 6 months. And Bob Stone he gave him the wrong file, right? And when he gave him the wrong file, there were vast parts missing, big chunks missing. And that's where, if you get one, is when you bought a 4th edition. When you bought a 4th edition, you also got these things called pasties, right?
And they insert
Not pasties that you normally think of.
Not the
When
kind
hear
you would
that
find
term.
here in Panama City, okay? These are different kinds of pasties. Yeah, and so you would get your book, and then you would have instructions where to put these pasties. And then eventually that left also.
The first printing of the 4th edition in the table of contents, one of the chapters is, "What are we here?" So if you ever get a chance to get one of them, you need to buy it.
Yeah, but that's the first printing, you know. But then after that, they fixed that.
I
But-
remember getting those pasties, and I
me
didn't
too.
think it was all that unusual. I'm like, okay, somebody screwed up. We put this in. It was no big deal, you know. But a lot of folks got real upset about it.
Well, I'll tell you what we did as an area committee. We had an area lit committee at this point in time between the 3rd edition revised and the 4th edition. And my buddy Grover, who is, you know, he's kind of an activist kind of guy. We got clean together and did area and regional service together. Yeah. He was just, they had raped our book. They, you know, we sat down and went through it line by line between the 3rd edition revised and the 4th edition. We could find no material differences. None. You know, but because we'll get our panties in the water at the drop of a hat, and we just will, you know, and we never met a cause we didn't really like, especially if it's raging against the machine or us against them.
It's always like good at us against them.
Yeah.
And it's all, you know, and since the book, there's always this rival between East Coast and West Coast. And, you know, it worked really well for us in the East Coast to not trust anybody from the West Coast. And if anybody knows California Kelly, who is part of this region and our delegate, I love to mess with him about that. And he just gets so frustrated with me. So, and we got the 5th edition, which was the right.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Because I read that when they actually approved for the bid, what was the process that, can you explain the process that happened if they actually approved, when it supposedly went back to the fellowship? Because I heard there was a really short window.
Very short.
It was tiny. I
It
can't
was
remember. It's like
it was
30
enough
days.
So it never actually went back to the groups, it went only to the reps?
I think it went to be voted up or down, not
Yeah.
to be
So it never
amended.
actually went back to
Right.
the groups?
And I don't even, to be honest with you, I don't even know if I've never seen an approval form. So.
I think it went back to the groups
know.
in the car, is what I think
Yeah.
happened to it. And
Yeah.
I think there was.
Yeah, by then we had the car.
A tiny window
So there's no
to,
way that it could, like even today's technology, that would be difficult to do in that time period?
no, it would be impossible to do, to give people a fair chance.
Some
to
of us
read.
think it was really impossible. Some of us don't feel like that was a correct.
Shocked. She would use that term.
Some of us don't feel like it was a correct approval process. Okay, but there still was an approval process. So to say there was no approval process, there still was an approval process, and that was during the same time that we got in that same time frame of a 3-4 year period where the concepts came to be. And some of us have some real feelings about the concepts, okay, that we're not going to talk about, are we, right?
No, man, I'm good.
But what I'm saying is there's a lot of things that happened in between that time, right, wrong, or indifferent, and maybe some of it helped save us, okay? You know, because we're our own worst enemies. And one thing that was really good, even though it came to pass and it was hard, was having Bob Stone help us, because Bob Stone helped us to stay on the map and not to keep self-destructing to a point where we weren't on the map anymore.
Bob Stone was not an addict,
Yeah.
for those of you who didn't know.
And he left much the same way Jimmy left. right? Without being told, being locked out. Yeah, we are not the greatest communicators in the world. Right?
The story I heard about the locked out of Jimmy was that Stone was a business person. He was an administrator. That's what he did for a living. That's why they hired him. First thing the administrator does when they come in is they change the locks. First thing. I mean, and that's kind of standard procedure in most businesses. So he did that without knowing that Jimmy didn't know. And that's why Jimmy got his feelings hurt.
And he took a huge pay cut
Yeah, he did.
to help Narcotics Anonymous.
There's a book. What's it called?
That one right there.
My Years with Narcotics Anonymous by Bob Stone.
It's huge.
It's good.
Currently being reprinted by Beau, and you can get a copy of it for $25, if I'm not mistaken.
And there's some PDF copies too.
Huh?
There's, they got it, Hazleton is the site name, it's on it, Hazleton, but you can download it for free. The
Yeah.
purchase the book is from there, but.
I mean, look at it. It costs $25
But
to
it's
print it,
a-
I guarantee.
It's a neat book because it gives you a perspective from somebody that's not an addict. Just like this is a really good book. I really like this book because this is written by Jimmy's daughter, and it really helps make Jimmy human, And I think that's really important because we tend to want to put people on pedestals and think there's something that they're not, and we're all people, And this gives you, even though she's an addict, this gives you more of a Narnon type perspective of the fact that, Jimmy pretty much abandoned his family when he was using emotionally and spiritually and time-wise, and after he got clean, pretty much abandoned his family too, because, and not that, and here's the really important part. It's not good, bad, or indifferent, right? I mean, we all have character defects, I have to struggle on a daily basis to stay connected to my family, so... but that's the kind of the byline of the basic text from beginning to end to where we got now. And then there was this fellow, right? And I'm just going to open that up and we can go from wherever you want to go with this, wherever you guys want to do with this. There was this fellow named Grateful Dave. All right. And he didn't really think that the way the basic text, the 5th edition came about was correct. So him and a few other people, Billy Allen and a few other people, they put together what we now call the Baby Blue. All right. Which is a...
We got one.
we got two or three of them. We don't have any of the reprints. We have the original. And this is where...
one of the reprints.
Oh, do we have a reprint? Oh, okay. This is where they put together the 3rd edition revised with the 4th and 9th tradition in it from the 2nd edition. All right.
It says 3rd edition revised with the original 4th and 9th edition.
But that particular put together thing has never been approved by the fellowship. I mean, the 3rd edition of Revised have been approved. Those 2 essays have been approved in the 2nd edition, but put together, they are not approved. So when you see it says 3rd edition Revised, it's really not a 3rd edition Revised because it has the second, the original 4th and 9th traditions. And he sued the fellowship. And there's lots of stuff that happened during that. And we got a new region over that, okay, for a while in Alabama because we were part of the fellow that's put all this together, right, Bill Brooks,
Most of this was his
who
stuff.
who started the first NA group in Alabama, Open Minds and Miracles in Decatur. He was the first chair, okay, of this committee. And either Grover or Donnie was the second chair. I can't remember now.
I think probably Donnie. but
Yeah,
I'm
I
not
think
sure.
so, but I can't remember. And so we had 2 years, we had this history convention. And for some reason, you know how we are, when we want to talk about the truth is really subject to change. We're really good at contempt prior to investigation. And there's lots of people that listen to a lot of other people and think they know what the hell the truth is. I have been one of those people, so I want you to know that,
I still am.
Yeah, somebody will tell me something, they'll give me like 30% of the information, and I'm like, fuck them. Let's get them. Them sons of a bitches, right? Let's kill them. All right? But what happened from that with all this controversy about history was that the history committee, in the history movement, the history committee was squelched on the regional level. And so most of us were from Montgomery North. Most of us were. So we started a new region. We call it the Anonymite region, right? And
Talking about taking your toys and going home back then.
because when they started to write the book, right, with the controversy around the book, a lot of the people that were helping with the book and doing the book, they weren't getting support, right? And their support group, their narcotics support group, was this literature committee, and they called themselves Anonymite. So that's where we got the name. And we stayed a region until we got recognized. I think it was when the World Service Conference was in Atlanta, I think. And we got recognized, and then we came back to the Alabama Northwest Florida region. A whole big story, you know, all that stuff. But the bottom line is that when I said that we're kind of a renegade committee, that original committee is what this committee is. You know, and who we answer to are the people that are sitting in this room, right? And we don't answer as being experts. You know, we got some knowledge. We're wrong on some knowledge. We got some stuff, our own opinions. We try really hard not to voice them, but you can hear them sometimes.
Some of us try harder than others.
But you know, we think it's really important to do history, right? And there's many reasons. One is history is really cool, and it's really nice to know where you came from. And it's nice to know how Narcotics Anonymous came from, you know, nothing to a program that depended on Alcoholics Anonymous, to a program that, you know, you could still be a part of Narcotics Anonymous and be an active member drinking alcohol, right? To a freestanding, we stand on our own, we have our own language, our own literature, we are who we are programs. And if you can learn these things, right, you don't have to commit. If you don't learn these things, you don't know this shit that we're talking about, at least have an idea, we're going to repeat the same mistakes, right? So it's really important for us to make new stupid mistakes, right? We don't want to make the same dumbass mistakes. We want to make new ones, okay? And I would tell you that the big thing when it comes to some of this stuff is that it doesn't matter what we think of people, where they came from, how they worked this program. There is no us and them in Narcotics Anonymous. We're all us. And we all depend on each other to save our lives. It doesn't matter who we are, right? And that it's really important that if you want to get involved in things in Narcotics Anonymous, you want to get involved in service, which is really, I think, a really crucial part of a person's program, right? That it's important to understand that contempt prior to investigation does not work, even though it might be one of our greatest tools, right? And I have to really work on that a lot myself, because I think I know shit. And the moment, you know, this is how addiction works. The moment I think I know shit, that's usually the moment I have buffaloed myself and I am walking off the cliff. And my friends are saying, don't walk off the cliff. And I'm saying, you don't understand. And they go, don't do it. And I'm like, oh, you guys are stupid. And they don't do it. And
Some of us are jumping off of it.
And then I jump off the cliff. I hit the bottom. I got broken bones. And then I look up and said, why didn't you warn me? Why didn't you stop me from doing this, right? So, you know, I think that's just really important, because I am an us and them kind of guy. I've always been convinced that whoever the hell they are, or fuck they are, whoever they are, I am convinced that they want to take whatever it is that I have. You know, no matter. Could be just this quarter. I could be walking around with a quarter, pretty sure that there are people trying to steal my quarter and trying to say things about me, and they don't like me. And, you know, and I really actually find out through working the steps that I'm not nearly as important as I think I am. You know, everybody else is so concerned about themselves, they do not give a shit about me. All right. And then I wanted to add, I'm going to open this up again and to questions and to these guys, but I want to add one more thing, because and I wanted to do this at the beginning, but I forgot. But because, I don't know why, but we're not being recorded, right? And we did the workshop yesterday, and we're doing the workshop today. I want you to know that Rusty's recording us, because Rusty's smart. And so if you want a copy of this recording, you can have this.
Good luck.
And you can email Rusty.
I'll send you a copy.
You could probably email him, I'd say probably anywhere from 6 times to 12 times. And by the 12th time, he'll think, this guy really wants this copy or this gal. So you'll get it eventually. We're not keeping it because we like to keep secrets. We're keeping it because we take not being organized to a whole new level, right? You know, if you go to a convention or other places and you go to a history workshop, it's going to be much different than this. All right, so I would go to those, right? And I would definitely go to the presentation guys. Those guys are excellent. We saw them in Atlanta. And if you really want to learn something, those guys.
There's two actual.
Yeah,
They
those are the guys
what we
you
would
need
classify as historians, Boyd and Chris.
Yeah.
And they do some stuff. There's also some other resources. MyRecoveryCast.com is a podcast of two guys that interview people who've been around forever. They've done 20-something different podcasts. It's free. They're on Facebook. They're on the web. You can get them on iTunes. MyRecoveryCast, all one word, .com. Phenomenal history stuff. Boyd and Chris actually go places, and they've got some phenomenal history stuff as well. I wanted to give those two guys a plug because My Recovery Cast is amazing. I listen to it quite regularly. Don was talking about where we came from, and we're starting to talk about the basic text, and we kind of went through it really fast, you know, and there were, in 77 is when the letter came out. The book came out in 82, 83. You know, for some reason I remember it as 82. The book says 82,
I think it
but
went to
the
the printer
timeline
in
says
82.
83. I mean, the front of the book says 82. So somewhere in there. So between those years, we had the Wichita, the Memphis, the Miami, you know, all the different conferences that we had every year. And, and I stated earlier that I heard that there were 418 documented addicts. There was one addict that was in all 7. That was Beau. Conferences. Ed was at 5 of them. So there are people still breathing who were there. Some of the stories that I heard coming up after I got the book in my hand was that in order to help pay for some of this, because that was an unfunded project by World Service Conference, the people there, the different areas that hosted, they did things to get money for envelopes, for stamps, for printing. They did things that addicts do, especially the women. And the thing that I remember most, and I don't know about that part of it, that's just hearsay, but there was some blood being sold. Plasma. Addicts went and sold blood to get $25 or whatever it was to go buy stamps. And that was the big thing. Stamps was expensive.
Heroin addicts, ex-heroin addicts.
Yes.
Needles to draw blood, so there was a lot of that.
Yeah. So, to get those 418, to get this book out, to get it, to the point where it's an approval form, to the point where it's printed, to the point where we can argue over steps 4 and 9, traditions 4 and 9, to the point where we can, grab the wrong file and have it printed. Those people were in a room with very little literature, very little guidance. Most all of them were newcomers. Because you think about it, you got a lit conference. What happens? The few people who go, who are interested, grab all their newcomers and say, come on, let's go. And they're like, I ain't got nothing else to do, so I go. That's what we do. So they're the ones that put the book together. And there was one story I heard, I think I heard this from Joseph, where they actually, and other people as well, had pieces of paper where they would cut and paste. Not on a computer, but they cut little pieces of paragraphs out and made sentences out of them and put them together on the page in order
With an
to...
X-Acto knife and glue.
Exactly. That kind of cut and paste.
Is this before or after the fella in New York went on a bender and spent the money?
This was before.
Well, this is before.
Way before.
Way before.
Okay, thanks.
I don't think it was New York, was it?
It was California.
California.
California, sorry.
Yeah.
They did I know a little bit more about it because I haven't been there, Beau, so I've heard a lot of these stories.
Cool.
There's a story he was recently talking about is how they did like free flow writing, where they would pass the little, they would write this stuff, and for 40 minutes they would read as fast as they could, 15 minutes read as fast as they could, and they would like take the tick mark, does this sound like it's stupid or not? And then they would talk about it, and then they would go through it. And the way that stuff was written has never really been done since.
Yeah.
I mean, and none of the other literature is quite like that. And it's kind of interesting. So.
We started the first It Works How and Why book and tried to do that, but it
Didn't work real well then
didn't work.
either.
When Rusty was talking about the funding, you know, and where the money came from to do this, you know, I've heard many times about people talk about selling blood. What you rarely hear talked about is some of the women were selling something more than blood.
Yeah.
And we hear that talked about very rarely, but I've talked to a couple of people that were there, and that was part of where the money came from.
Hair care products.
Huh?
Yeah, they were selling haircuts.
That's it, Avon, that's it.
Yeah, Amway.
It shows that the clear was there. Though. I mean, in the time, and you're absolutely right. I mean, that's what I heard was there was a lot of people that were like fresh off the streets and they couldn't. And they recently had a celebration in Pennsylvania where all the remaining guys, most of them that were still alive during that period, got to celebrate George's birthday. And they all went up there. And there's some tapes on it, where they tape some of their conversations about where they are now and what they remember and a lot of the things.
The other hope, one of the reasons we keep doing this is that we're all old, and somebody needs to else, get interested in this and help carry this on, because a lot of this is just oral tradition.
Yeah.
A lot of this is just oral tradition. Nominate him.
Hey, I was in your guys' shoes about a year ago, and I've been cleaning for a couple of decades. I didn't know half this stuff, and I started learning about it, and I was like fascinated. And there's a lot of information that,
Oh, yeah.
it's amazing that you start realizing it's like, oh, we've been reinventing the wheel so many damn times.
Yeah. Anytime you get a chance to talk to the source, that's always a good
Always
thing.
good thing.
But there is a current book, the Miracles book. It's currently in print that walks you through a lot of what.
It walks you through, like I said, it walks you through the standardized, what we know about factual history.
The clean version.
Yeah.
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 You
And
know?
well, I mean,
It's not gonna take
okay,
about that
it
except
walks
an
through the
ass, you know?
50s. It walks through the 50s, right? But it doesn't really get into all the craziness of the controversy and the fighting over the traditions
People
and
get high over
the
that shit.
certain different personalities, that really tried to run Narcotics Anonymous, and the ones that wanted it more like AA. And that whole conflict, right? And that whole conflict of having to finally bottom out to figure it
There's a
out.
couple books that have been written that are not conference approved, but they kind of go into like there's a Tradition Wars book. There's the history of the basic text, and these are ones you can download for free. They go into a lot of the other. You guys probably got it right up there.
They're up here on the table.
They're up there on the
Well, never
table.
mind.
We got
You
some.
can get them for free. They have them where you can get
Right,
the download
right.
version for free, but you can also purchase them. But that's
I don't think the Tradition Wars book is here, but it's also
Yeah.
in the same place. So.
it's like,
I would like to read y'all 3 paragraphs out of this book right here.
What book is that?
This is Bob Stone's book,
Okay.
My Years with Narcotics Anonymous, and these are the introductions to 3 of the chapters. It says, if the previous 2 years, and he's talking, I think this is written in 1979, okay? He said, if the previous 2 years had been like just getting started, and they were, the next 2 years were filled with growing pains. People everywhere were feverishly working to start new recovery and service meetings and to fulfill the 1,000,001 needs and demands of the growing fellowship. Those needs and demands range from starting more meetings and holding local dances to handling media coverage and writing a basic text. Regions, committees, boards, and individuals were each stretching and growing, reaching to find the limits of their capability, authority, and responsibility. The organizational mobile was being jostled and trying to regain balance as each entity tried to determine what its role was or what it ought to be. Since no one really knew what or how much to expect from the office, the conference, the trustees, or regions, there was a lot of conflict. Everyone was feeling their way through uncharted territory. Total revenue for the World Service Office in 1976 was $210. This is 1981. Conflict had been simmering for several years beneath the surface among various service boards and committees of World Services. It was especially evident in the relationships between the office and the literature movement, and also between the office and some of the trustees. In the early months of 1981, conflict opened into a pitched battle. The office was both aggressor and defendant. Unlike past battles, which were usually resolved by personal diplomacy among the trustees, these conflicts were persistent and growing. From them sprung permanent adversarial camps that would engage in open conflict for more than 10 years. All right, and this is 1983, entitled Tumultuous Times. 1983 was a traumatic year for the fellowship. Publication of the book was months behind schedule. The office was about to lose some $15,000 to a printer who went bankrupt. There's your amount. Word was about to spread that the essays on the fourth and ninth traditions in the basic text had been changed without consultation with the fellowship, and Jimmy was going to be relieved from his duties as office manager. It was going to be a sad ending for the only continuously active member then alive who had been a part of NA's birth. And that kind of sets the tone for what the hell all is going on while we're trying to produce this book. You know, what Don read and talked about a while ago. I have met the enemy and he is us. And it took me 20 years to learn that. And I'm sharing that, so if you've maybe been here less than that, that's something good to know. Because I will grab a hold of any us and them situation that there's something in my personality that cries out for that. And I have to be resistant to that. And I have to take a long, hard look at myself when I start pointing fingers at somebody. You know, because quite often they have something in them that I see in me that I don't like.
You have a question?
You know, one of the things that I'm finding out about Narcotics Anonymous is that its history is relative to deceptive interpretation. Depending upon who you talk to, you're going to get a different perception of what took place in the early years. But to my astonishment, it's no different than what's going on today. You know, you put 5 addicts in a room, and when they walk out, all of them will have a different story. You know, I serve as
Two of them will hate each other.
facilitator for the South Atlanta area. And just recently, we went through a controversy that was so clear in my mind. You know, I had already, what was the phrase that you used earlier?
Contempt prior to investigation.
Prior to the investigation. I had already made up my mind that it was due to a certain action by a certain person. And the responsibility to find out what happened dropped in my lap. And when it dropped in my lap, now that I'm doing the investigation, you know, and coming to some conclusions of my own based upon what I see on paperwork, totally different perception of it, you know. So I'm real grateful to be a part of what's going on in the area where I serve. I'm real grateful, you know, and to sit in on history sessions where I can find out about the growing pains of Narcotics Anonymous, you know, because I don't ever think it's going to end. I think there's going to always be growing pains because addicts always have different opinions, you know, and once they become a part of service, their opinions become ingrained in stone for some reason or another. But it's a happy time for me because I'm clean and I'm doing what God has asked me.
10-14.
Who and what we are changes as time goes on. Hopefully, if we work the steps, you know. That reminds me of something else.
Okay, well, I want to say, you write it down, because I want to say something.
Okay.
Because this is important, is that when we went through this stuff and we go through this stuff, a lot of people have gotten villainized, right? And I was definitely on a camp, all right? I was definitely on a side, and I definitely had my opinion, and I definitely had opinions about people that were not on my side. And then over the years, a lot more things have become more accessible, and people travel, and I met lots of these people, met lots of them, right? And you know what? They're just like us. They're people, and some of them I liked, some of them I didn't like, but I think all of them were good people, and all of them, whatever they did or didn't feel, were wanting the best for Narcotics Anonymous, you know? So I'm not, did you write it down?
Yeah, I did.
Because you would have forgotten.
Where I think this was in the readings that we started out with in the traditions where it talks about we eventually get to the steps, you know, and eventually is changed over time. Eventually, for people in my generation of recovery, was something quite different than what it is today because of the dearth of literature and experience, strength, and hope that we had. My sponsor worked his first written 4-step when he had 10 years clean. My oldest sponsee brother did his when he had 7 years clean. I had 5 or 6 years clean when I did mine. We don't do that anymore, you know. A friend of mine calls it pushing a Cadillac around town. I don't teach people to push the Cadillac anymore. I try to teach them to get in and ride at least, you know. But we didn't know any better.
You're a Cadillac.
Yeah, man.
My name's Tony Bennett. My question is, with the current social media and with the information ages, I mean, it's right now, I believe it's happening with narcotics anonymous. From your guys' perspective, how do you see the information?
Hey guys, let's have one person talk at a time, okay?
How do you see the information that's becoming so readily available with almost everything you guys have gotten, a lot of things now free for online, you get it. And now you're having more and more people who are, it's almost like revitalizing, but there's a different perspective that's starting to happen. And I just was kind of curious as to see if you guys are kind of seeing that trend happening too, and how do you perceive it, knowing the history of kind of what's the evolution that's happening now within our current fellowship. I mean, I personally think that there's a lot of, I don't want to say the word revival, but there's a lot of people that are allowed to ask some questions. And just kind of see how do you guys think about that right now?
I think it's the same cycles happening. It's just happening faster, kind of thing with the us and them, and then people growing past that. That's just my take on it. Is that the things are happening faster with the way things are today. And I was thinking about this, is that, you know, we're talking a lot about what happened in the past, because a lot of what happened in the past is going on again today. Especially in you know, when we went, and we talked about this yesterday in the session yesterday afternoon, when we went from a worldwide fellowship that was only in the United States to a true worldwide fellowship, you know. Some of the stuff that I've been listening to here lately talks about, you know, and the fellow was here yesterday afternoon. He's from Iran, okay? He lives here and he's an American citizen, but he's from Iran. And he was asking me if I had heard about what happened in Iran, you know, in the last 10 to 20 years. And I went, yeah, I've heard. It's freaking phenomenal. Their office got so big. I mean, number-wise, they got more addicts than the rest of the world combined, is what I'm hearing. Okay, it's phenomenal. One guy sponsoring 175 people, you know, at a time in one big room. And they have lectures where one guy shares recovery with 300 people in a stadium, you know. The writing of the basic text, or translation of the basic text into Japanese, took 20 years, because the Japanese have no concept in their language of a deity, a one figurehead, you know, deity. They have concepts like, you know, Confucius, because Confucius wasn't the deity. Confucius had the concepts, and Buddhism and that whole thing. It took forever and they actually have Chinese characters in their book, and then higher power spelled out, and then Chinese characters, because they don't have a word for that. You know, because you can't just do word for word. You got to do concept. You got to do the feeling of it. So, I mean, this is 2017, and they just got a book in Japanese. The latest thing is Africa. What's happening over there? It's growing like crazy over there. There are people who are hungry for this message. They are hungry. There are people dying who were like, you know, Beau talked about in his letter. It made it sound like, you know, people are going to die if we don't get this. And that I've heard Beau's, you know, some of his talks, and that was his main thing, was that people are dying because they don't get this message. Well, that's what's happening today, because we don't have the book in every language. It takes $100,000 in 10 years just to translate it into a simple language that does translate. It takes a whole lot more money and a whole lot more. And the controversy with the book costing so much, it's what, $1.50 to print, but we pay $15 for it.
We do?
Huh? Some places.
I think it's $12, isn't it?
Some places it's
$11.80.
Anyway,
Without the discount.
they're yeah, without discount.
In Memphis, they're $5.
I know. But the money, what that money goes to is to be able to fund people to go to Russia, to go to Africa, to go to Iran, Afghanistan, where there are addicts just like us who've never heard this message, still in this day and age, who they can reach out to because of that money. And it kind of gave me a different light on the cost of the book, because I was in that camp, they're charging too much for the book, camp for a while. I got in that same us and them thing too. And these guys helped me bring me out of it, because when it comes right down to it, the only damn thing that's important is that this message, however the hell it gets there, it gets into the hand of the recovering
I know
addict.
that in Africa, have you guys seen the Swahili translation?
No.
They couldn't wait for the money to be, whatever, that process.
Yeah, they did it themselves, is what I heard.
Themselves, and they translated
'Cause it's the
the
largest
second edition
language.
Because they could, they didn't have to do it, there was a way they could, and they did it, and they translated word for word into Swahili, so you have literally, you have the English, then you have Swahili written right underneath it, the translation to it. They did it themselves, and they printed it themselves.
That's
awesome.
happened numerous
All
times.
over
So-
the world right now, it's starting to happen.
I wanted to answer that social media question real quick, is that I just think information in general is a double-edged sword.
Yes.
Okay, and I just think the social media thing just makes that process a lot faster. That we can get from point A to point B faster. And for those that really want to know the truth, they're going to not just take information here and there, they're going to actually do some research on it. Yes, ma'am.
Also, that's why we have the World Service, actually, the car report and all that. We can't do anything really unless it goes through, we vote, is that right? We still do? The car report and all that, even different languages of the books. And we just did something, last year? Did we just do something, we all had to vote?
We vote on the car.
Every
We don't.
year, or
We don't
every
necessarily vote on the cat.
And all that stuff, so the World Service for us takes care of all that.
It's real big. And that's what I was talking about. Some of these areas, like Iran, they were in a situation where, in like some of these other countries, the process for that stuff to happen, they're like, we can't wait. We need it now because people are dying. So what's happening, in that, and then a lot of people were surprised that with Iran, is they blew up, and to the point where like it was on their own. There was some help. There were people helping them, and that's happening in a lot of. But like, there's something from around Russia, some of these other languages and things like that. These countries, these places where they're just not getting. They're like, they get a book. It's kind of like that one story with the A book that was dropped in the bin, the thing in Alaska. There was no recovery. Somebody found the book, and somebody threw it away, and they ran with it. And then one day somebody shows up. There's like 30 or 40 meetings. That's happening all over the world right now. In Malaysia, you guys heard about the Philippines, right? I'm sure you've heard about that, where they're literally killing addicts. And so what they're doing is they don't have any language. They're starting to translate it and do it. And there's people that are helping them on their own without waiting on the process. So bureaucracy, whatever, is happening.
And culture is another thing. And, in Iran, it's illegal, and you get put to death for being an alcoholic. But you can be a drug addict, in the company. In the country. But there's a whole bunch of cultural differences you got to really take into account. I heard a talk from a guy who just, been doing a whole bunch of stuff in Africa. And he was talking about the cultural differences and how some of the women came in and they're like, we want to come to the meetings too. We want to be part of the service structure too. And the culture over there, they don't let them, and so they're having to go in and help the addicts in the rooms understand that, this is NA, this is the way we try to do things. So you got to really take a lot of that into consideration.
And you said something really important that people don't really, a lot of people, we like to let people do shit for us, right? But we still, our fellowship, everybody is still accountable to the groups. The groups are still accountable to the home group members. And I always think it's important that we let all our home group members know that they have a voice, and it's just as important. I don't care if you've been here 10 seconds or like me for a while, your voice is just as important as my voice, okay? And that if you want to get involved, instead of thinking, what are they doing? You can get involved, and then you can become they, right?
Yes, you are they.
And then you become they, and, because when you look at it, this is a common bitch in service work. Nobody's getting involved, and I was always told if you got 10% of the fellowship involved, you're doing good. I don't know if I've ever seen 10%, ever.
Question is kind of different from what you're talking about. It's about social media. Like nowadays, like everybody puts stuff on Facebook, and it says it's okay for me to break my anonymity to, like, I have 200 friends, 300 friends. Half of them are not in an A community. So when I post a picture of me and 5 of my girlfriends at the convention with the NH t-shirts all over the place. I'm breaking technically their anonymity to everybody else on my Facebook page who's not, maybe doesn't even know about me, but I mean, they do know now.
If you don't have permission from them to post a picture.
So,
I mean, it's always standard at a Narcotics Anonymous meeting or convention, whatever. It's kind of weird now with phones, but you always ask somebody's permission because people could get fired. People can lose their jobs. They can lose family members. You know, there was a guy many, many years ago, a lawyer, that got his picture in the newspaper, unbeknownst to him, in California, and he lost his job. So, as long as you have people's permission, you ain't breaking nobody's anonymity.
Yeah, but getting somebody's permission to take their picture is one thing. Getting somebody's permission to post it, God knows where, is something entirely.
Every time I take a picture of somebody, I let them know that I'm not going to post it on Facebook.
Yes.
You know, and I have friends that they have no problems with me taking their picture, but I have one named Dan, and the only reason he lets me take his picture, he didn't let nobody else take his picture because he knows I will not put it on social media because he does not want that to ever happen.
We've run out of time, folks. We've actually filled 90 minutes. That's kind of amazing.
I hope next year that you guys consider doing this again and that they'll actually get you on the card as opposed to just a sandwich with it.
You know what you want to do? You want to go talk to
the
Ron, talk to Ron, who is the program guy,
Sure.
and talk to the chair, vice chair,
Well, that's
and tell them
right.
how much you like this.
I know actually they sent me some type of survey and some
No.
people got it and some don't.
Yeah,
so-
but if you tell them verbally and just, you know, tell them that you really enjoyed what was going on.
I think if you're on that card, I think.
And that's also just even like if your home groups or your areas or regions or what, I mean area, or if you're not from this region, if you just want us to come and do this.
Yeah, we go other places.
Yeah, we do this all the time.
Yeah, we go to other
that's a lie.
conventions.
We do this whenever we're asked, which every once in a while it feels like all the time. But then there's vast amounts of time that it feels like never.
And when we have the financial wherewithal to do it. I want to be
Yeah.
transparent about this. The region, the committee paid for our room to come
Yeah.
down here. We could, Don and I live on a fixed income.
We have worked our way down the economic ladder
Yes, we
to
have.
almost
We're
zero.
prolific underachievers.
You can always sell that book. You'd be able to go for.
There you go.
Yeah, you need to get me started on eBay. Okay, get me started on eBay.
Thank you guys.
Not for long.
Let's end with the prayer.